Hey everyone, welcome back. We are the podcast Wreckers. Matlock is doing his best here to make it.
I got this little
Yeah.
tuft that won't sit down. I'm trying
That's
to
fine.
make sure.
We're grooming ourselves. For those of you that are only on audio, Matlock's currently making his beard pointy, and that's important. And that's why we've elected to start the episode in this manner. Hi everyone, I'm Adam Aragon. You can also see my pointy-haired co-host Matlock Sumsteg over here, and a very special guest today, Jessie Rushing. Jessie, say hi and tell us why you're cool and interesting.
There's so many reasons that I'm cool and interesting. I couldn't
What
possibly...
a narcissist.
Your humility being the biggest one.
You there, but hi, I'm Jessie. I think I'm going to fit right in on this podcast, and I'm happy to be here. I believe I'm here specifically to talk about the fact that I've been practicing solo polyamory for since 2014, and that I'm starting a business around that, just really trying to see if I can make being a slut pay my rent, and without starting an OnlyFans, because that's like plan B.
I mean, it's nice of you to try another angle.
I mean, we'll see where this goes.
Be a plan C. Yeah. There might be a different plan B in there, and then OnlyFans becomes plan C. But we'll figure that out today.
Plan D is seduce Jeff Bezos. But
so for the layman,
for me.
For the layman, Jessie, will you explain to us what solely polyamory means?
Assuming that people know what regular polyamory is, which is usually practiced in the formation of a couple. Solo polyamory is just when you're polyamorous, but you're not a part of a couple. So as opposed to a lot of people start out as a monogamous couple that opens up and then they have some kind of open relationship or are polyamorous, I am just me, and all of my relationships are polyamorous. So everybody is aware and consenting from the beginning, and that is the intent to continue.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, for people in a, what would you call that when it's multiple people practicing solo polyamory together? Or I guess they aren't together in that situation. They are just seeing each other.
Regular partners, I guess, right?
Right.
I think that's up to those people, right? So the main ideas behind solo polyamory are kind of that you're not really with the intent of trying to work up the relationship escalator with an individual. So your practice of polyamory and romantic relationships is not with the idea that you're trying to eventually move in with someone, or you're trying to eventually, escalate your relationship in those traditional escalator type of ways. A lot of times people who are solo poly will also use the thing with using trying to say that they are their own primary. So if you're thinking of that in terms of hierarchy, which is not as popular, but is a thing that happens and comes up a lot in polyamory, you can think of a solo poly person is somebody who's just kind of already got their own, whether it's their own life, their own career, their own commitments, their own whatever that's going on, that's just not going to intertwine or enmesh their lives with a partner.
So you're mainly banging you, but some other people step in.
So I like to call that putting in a solo back in solo poly. But no, the idea is basically just that you can date, you can have casual and or serious relationships that are, any level of involvement, but not with the idea of being on the escalator, and not practicing polyamory as a part of an established couple or dyad or triad or quad or something.
Can you explain the escalator concept a bit more?
Good call.
Sure. So the escalator is what we see in mono-heteronormative culture, right? Where you have a couple who meets and they're going to date until they decide to become sexually exclusive. And then at some point they're going to be trying to move in together, and then maybe eventually wanting to intertwine finances, have kids, get married. The idea is that you're kind of always progressing up a ladder, and that you can't really go back down the ladder, and that once you pick a person to go up the ladder with, you just kind of have to keep riding the escalator up that path with them. And that is, what used to be very typical and is not really typical for, I think, a lot of people in younger generations. And I think as things like non-monogamy become more common and more popular, like the escalator becomes less effective.
Right. So people are recognizing, or younger generations are recognizing now how that's just not, it's an outdated system.
Yeah, it's like that nuclear family model is kind of, we're questioning that and throwing that away in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, so do you associate that same thing, like the entire concept of family and relationships is altering for society, or is this just more of like a movement, like of a subset of people?
Oh, I think there's a lot of different things going on there, right? Like, I think there is a cultural questioning of monogamy as a cultural norm that is just like happening, and probably happens in waves, like other, cultural norms kind of come and go, right? So I think we're seeing that. I think there's also I think it's like a bunch of different things, right? There's like political movements that are anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans rights and things like that. And non-monogamy kind of fits in with that, even though it's, not quite the same as like an LGBT identity. It's kind of a subversive way of doing love and relationships.
It's a different lifestyle.
Yeah, so, there is, I think as the pendulum starts to swing in one direction, right, it kind of also swings in the other direction, that like things go towards the extremes, right? So we're seeing like more people question it. And really just, as people become more comfortable with the idea that things like gender are a construct, I think we are going to start really picking apart other elements of the patriarchy, and monogamy fits into that realm for me.
When do we reach the nexus? When does everyone bang everyone?
You mean the
we're going backwards from that. That's how we started. I think that's the bonobos and the whatever, like, and then
the Big Bang, right?
It's
the Big Bang. Yeah.
Damn you, society, and damn you, society, history,
that
futurism.
Happened.
The singularity, where we all just have one big cuddle puddle together.
Yeah, yes, one big old banging.
Yeah.
And so I asked you, what is your favorite and least favorite things about solo polyamory?
Yeah, so specifically with solo polyamory, I think one of the, it feels like it's kind of a subset, right, of a subculture already, right? So, the paradox of polyamory is that as you become non-monogamous and you start being open to more relationships, there's more people available, and you start seeing more connections, and you start seeing that love is really abundant, right? But then you also start narrowing down your compatibilities. And so the longer you've been poly, the more you've been practicing, the better your vocabulary is at explaining what it is that you want and how you want to navigate things. You actually start narrowing down the number of people that you're compatible with, to what feels like a smaller and smaller number. And so, that's the paradox, is that it's there are more people, there's more connections, there's more possibility, there's more openness, there's more fluidity, right? You can have all different kinds of relationships. You can be more like a relationship anarchist and have, relationships at all different kinds of levels with people. But you also, in those serious, I guess, commitments, right, you narrow down your compatibilities. And so you have more breakups, you have more heartbreak, more wow, I wish that this would work, but it's not a thing,
right?
And all of that kind of stuff, so that's just because that's just relationships, you just get more of that.
Right. I was going to say, it sounds like how you make friends, except for the heartbreak part, because you're not necessarily breaking things off with a friend when
right.
I know you don't.
It's going to grow apart.
Yeah.
You mean
it's are we friends or not, man? Is this going to work?
I need to know if we still have this label.
It's there's some friends you spend more time with, and eventually you spend more time with the fewer friends that you connect with the best. So.
I think it is actually very similar, right? Because I'm thinking of with heartbreak with friends, you might meet a new friend, who is really cool and really awesome and you click really well with them, but maybe they have a really busy life and a really busy schedule and they have like, you know, very young
But they have
kids
a
or
better
something.
friend.
Well,
They have a friend they spend all the time with.
like that for some reason
Yeah.
that you can't figure out, right?
Matlock, are you bringing
like,
our personal history into this? Because you're
No,
still my
not
best
at all.
friend. You're
Not
still my
at all.
best
Sure,
friend.
sure. Let's move on, shall we?
yeah,
What were you saying,
I walked
Jessie?
into something there. Anyway.
I don't know what it was. I just make
but
something.
you do. You know, you still can be friends with them, but you might not get to like hang out with them as much as you want, or you might not get to like have quite the like relationship that you want to have. And so that's the kind of thing in poly. It's like there's an openness to be like, okay, well, we're not going to be this for each other, but could we be something else? And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. It's hard to be friends with assholes, so you don't have to stay friends with all of your exes. But
I'm assuming different people have different attachment, like levels of attachment, even after. Like, do you? I'm assuming that you've had experience with people who are new to poly who have trouble disconnecting or detaching from somebody if they set a boundary. Or they say like, hey, like I don't want to see you as often, and they're like, oh, but I felt something more, and you're like, but that's not what this is.
Yeah, where you cross wires,
right?
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, like times where you have mismatches in expectations, and something that I think is kind of also unique to solo polyamory is you have the situation where it's like, yeah, but I'm still gonna choose myself, and an example of that would be like you start dating someone and they want to all of a sudden spend like 5 nights a week with you or something. And it's like, okay, well, that's not going to work. I have, you know, work and whatever. And I just am a person who needs a lot of alone time. So like my social battery burns out and I need like my own, like I need to go in my little kitey cave and like hermit and recharge. And so, you know, for some people that's really difficult for them to understand. It's like, well, but you don't have another partner taking up that time. So it's like, you know, if it was, well, I'm seeing, you know, XYZ partner and that's why I'm not going to see you. It's like, well, no, I'm just staying home. I'm not seeing anybody.
Well,
it's like, well,
that's your best friend is you,
with
right?
that. Right, exactly. You end up with like, sometimes that's hard for people to understand. It sometimes can be easier for people to accept being secondary to another person, but not being secondary to me, to myself, right?
Especially
and it's like,
narcissists. For some reason, they have a real problem with that.
Work in relationships, right? Like, aren't we all supposed to kind of be putting ourselves like our own needs first, right? As opposed to the whole like set yourself on fire to keep somebody warm, right? Like if you take care of yourself first, put your oxygen mask on first. Then you can have things to, you know, be a, you know, provider and like, or a partner in the relationship, right?
It seems like the healthiest option is to, I mean, and what most people would say is like, always put yourself first, like take care of yourself. Don't worry, especially if you're a people pleaser or something, and you're always putting other people ahead of you.
I've always found one of the most interesting things, you know, about polyamory, like you mentioned, is the relationship escalator, is when you are exercising different forms of polyamory, there is a world in which you can go down. You can go down a rung and down a few steps and de-escalate, and maybe go back up, you know, like because partnership is more fluid, because, you know, like circumstances change, that you can, you know, bring the volume up and down on any given relationship.
Sometimes, I mean, I think that takes a lot of, right, it doesn't work all the time, and it takes a very you know, kind of careful navigation through those different situations and different circumstances. But yeah, it does open up possibilities for de-escalation.
I was going to say, I've obviously, like, I've at some point practiced, you know, a couple different forms of polyamory just to like kind of see where I fit into the agenda, and into the
polyamory agenda.
Into the
conspiracy. By the way, we're not trying to convert anyone today. In case you're curious,
I didn't sign up for an agenda.
Sorry, you know, I'm tired. I just I'm
you and your agenda. This life you've chosen and your agenda.
Your agenda.
This is a secret, like deep, like red.
This is some deep state
broadcast.
stuff.
We lure you in by making. Oh yeah, you can. It's a platform for
like,
you
I
to
think
express.
we're getting
Please tell us
super
more.
liberal.
in the
Tell us
brain
more.
vibes going on here, guys. Just so you know.
Now it's crossfire.
Okay, so I have a bad choice of words, but
I whip out a bow tie. I'm Tucker Carlson all of a sudden. Sorry.
But yeah, I just think it's interesting to like choose what's right for you, you know, when you want to, like, and that's like one of the things that I took away from all my experiences is that you can be polyamorous, solo polyamorous, monogamous, so you know, completely by yourself, and like at different points in your life, that might be what works for you. Like you know, there you can be fluid, you can change. You know, like on that note, do you think that solo polyamory is like where you'll remain the rest of your days, or do you think that you know you might shift someday?
I don't know. I mean, for right now, I've been, so for me personally, I think it might help to make sense that I became non-monogamous or started practicing polyamory after I got divorced. So I was essentially single when I, decided to or started learning about and like reading and figuring out like, oh, hey, maybe there's alternate ways than the escalator. And so for me, it's just kind of always been what made sense. I have a fairly intense career that takes up a lot of time and energy. I'm child free by choice, but like I have other kind of like intense hobbies and things that I get into. So, yeah, I'm not really like, I've never really wanted to, I've done the like married, owned a house, like been in the like situation like that. So like that's not super appealing to me. But that being said, if I found the right partner where it made sense from a like financial perspective to combine living situations in a way that we could both maintain our autonomy and independence, like maybe, but like I haven't found that partner so far.
But it sounds like you're able to cast a pretty wide net in the polyamory community for like more so than I guess
You're
when you
looking
go on
for
dating
rich. You're looking
apps
for
and
rich,
stuff.
fast, and loose. And like,
Well,
I think like
none of those.
no, not
when
you.
did
Man,
I say
No, no.
I am.
Matlock,
Yeah.
you guys are looking for. I'm confused by
No.
who's looking for what here because none of those things seem like.
what
Um,
what I wanted to interject is so I was raised cis male and have since become non-binary or been non-binary came out and 'cause I felt comfortable when it was like, oh, everybody can do it, look, all the younger generations are doing it, like why don't I do it finally, because everyone made fun of me for being effeminate. um, Anyways, that's besides the point, but I'm in a straight relationship. I present kind of straight. And uh, my current girlfriend, uh, we she's a day person. I'm a night person.
mhm.
She needs that alone time, like you. She like when she comes home from work, it's like she can't even vent. Like I can't even ask her how her day was because she'll tell me, and it exhausts her even more, and she can't
Yeah.
help but vent.
Don't even
when
talk
I'm
to me.
like,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
it's like we
I've been dealing
learned.
with people all day. Like, don't.
And throughout our we've been together I think almost 9 years now, and throughout our relationship there's been times where it's like, god, like I don't know, like we need such different things. I don't know if there's a way around it, and we'll usually find some sort of way that works for both of us, like not even a compromise, just sort of like, well, if I do it this my thing this way at this time and you do this way, or you get time alone you can spend and you get the room to yourself, until you're ready to socialize, and then we can spend some time. It's like we found workarounds where even the stuff that was like really like, how are we going to get through this, like because we're able to communicate better than any relationship I've had prior, and I've had bad communicative relationships prior, like we've been able to work through it. And I guess, yeah, like you're saying, it's not a matter of like how long you're going to be polyamorous or anything. It's just a matter of like finding somebody who is able to not only like fit a lot of those gaps that
Yeah.
you need somebody to fit, but is also willing, or like just naturally already fits,
Yeah.
but also is
One or
willing
more
to.
people who are compatible and
Exactly.
communicative.
Right.
Yeah, And I think people sometimes fall into the trap of assuming that, people are like there's like I think a puzzle analogy, right? It's like you're trying to find different pieces, and like different people will
Just
fit different needs, right? And it's
right.
like I tend to like advise people, especially people who are new to polyamory or who are not familiar with it, to avoid the idea that you're gonna like that the goal, or that people are trying to kind of like fill different slots,
Complete
right?
me. Yeah, right.
Yeah, like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'm into running and like nerd shit. So I need a running partner who's really outdoorsy and fit and,
Right.
fitness, whatever, and a nerdy partner who plays, really long board games. Like, no, that's
Mhm.
not really the like having people try to just fill gaps in your life is a very weird kind of,
I
it's not
agree. And I don't think I was trying to
you
present
can
that. I just meant like
no,
somebody who like you get along with like a good best friend, like
yeah,
you
and I
click
think
right
I think
away.
that's kind of where I'm going with this is like you can end up kind of in this like almost feeling like an employer where you're like, okay, I have these part-time available roles and I'm gonna go
Right.
on this field or whatever dating
Who's
app
on the
and like
schedule this week?
Yeah, the
funnel
interviews are fun, but
interview, right? Funnel an interview for these roles in my life, right? And it's like that's I feel like I've done that. Like, don't do that. It's bad. Like, don't. That's one of the mistakes you make when you start doing this.
Right.
You're like, I'm gonna just find all the people to date, right? And you're gonna like fill all these roles. But the way it actually works in real life is a lot more like friends, right? You click with different people because you have different things in common with them. So
Right.
you go to a thing and then you meet this person and you click with them on this and now you start a relationship that looks like XYZ because of their availability and really relationships, especially romantic ones, are based on and sexual ones are based on availability and compatibility, right? So
Mhm.
if you're hot for each other, if you're both like within the same available proximity, if you have the same like whatever communication, you can like communicate well enough to be like, yeah, let's like hang out and do the things, right? Like actual relationships are about availability and compatibility. So like it does just kind of end up being like with friends where it's like you click with different people, you have different levels of intensity in each of those relationships. And then, some of those relationships are like romantic or sexual or, they are life building, you're planning futures together, you're, coordinating events, calendars, schedules, life stuff, like how you're going to do holidays with all your families and, all the
Yeah.
other
Right.
members of the polycule, right? Like,
Matlock and I try to occasionally plan each other's funerals. So
Oh, every day I'm planning yours. It's different
yeah,
every
it's
day.
starting to get weird, by the way.
I get new
weird.
ideas, and they get weirder and weirder.
All
So
right, you're
take
dressed as a
take
lobster, right?
me or you, both
Really
of
weird.
us. Um,
Everyone,
so Jesse,
everybody.
hypothetically, so take me through, say I'm brand new, I'm a baby to the poly community, right? I don't even know where to start, right?
A
So
fresh-faced,
Uh,
horny young man, a
so
young
lead me
person.
through, like, from your experience, what you've witnessed, first of all, do I reach out? Is there some place I go? Do I just do a Google search and look for online communities and
yeah.
then find an event, or where do I
So,
start? And
so
then how
the,
do I acclimate?
Yeah, so the first thing that I suggest everybody starts with is vocabulary, right? You need to like kind of learn what the words are that you're going
Of
to
the community? Yeah.
encounter, right? Whether that's on the dating sites, whether that's in the events, at the meetups. Like the first thing I would tell anybody kind of thinking about venturing it into it is to start by reading. And you can do this online. You can find different poly resources. My new website, justpolythings.com, is going to be a resource where you
Splash
can
that on the screen.
uh,
Edit that out. Edit
right,
that out.
slash
No, I'm
that,
kidding. I'm
drop a
kidding.
link here somewhere on the, there's a
Nice
link.
segue.
Yeah, that was a good,
Edit that
appreciate
out. Edit it
the
No,
all
no,
link
out.
start that
plug
over. Tell me
there.
about. Sorry, your
All right.
website. Is it
Sorry.
just
So my
polythings.com?
website is justpolythings.com. And yes, I actually just dropped a post about vocabulary with a bunch of different links to poly vocabulary resources so that you can find out like all different kinds of like poly words. And so that's where I would really kind of suggest people start. There's also tons of books now out there. So There are books, there's podcasts, there's blogs, there's sites, there's all different kinds of like resources that I would say are very educational that can kind of introduce you to all of the lingo, maybe some of the things that are common assumptions that monogamous people make that are maybe problematic, um, some of those kinds of things, so that you can be introduced to those and familiar with those ideas and those concepts before you show up at an event acting like a unicorn hunter with an OPP and not knowing what those words mean. And this is why, right? This is why, and like those are actual words in the community, and like people who don't know what I'm talking about should know what I'm talking about before they go to a poly
Right.
event.
Yeah. Do a little Googling, or you're going to step in some shit.
Do a little Google before you decide that you want to venture down this path.
Yeah.
This is probably an obvious, and you don't necessarily. I mean, I could ask this of any community basically, but say I've done some Googling, but I'm still new. Like, how would you want somebody to ask a question if they're just and obviously they're trying, but they're blanking on what to do in a scenario.
Yeah, so authentically, like, and really this is like exploring any space that you're not familiar with, and like, especially I realize as I'm saying this, I'm talking to the cis white guys in the room, but when you're in a space that you're not, like, when you're exploring a space that you're maybe like not used to, being the minority in, or you're not used to, like, you're not comfortable with that idea and you're like not used to that, just listen, just be authentic, ask sincerely and honestly. When you approach something with the attitude of, look, I don't want to be offensive, I really am just trying to learn, what does this mean, or how does this work? Most people are going to, like, kind of be like, okay, I'm going to, even if you phrased that really poorly, let me explain why that was really poorly.
Hey, shithead.
Why won't you
I say?
Like, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to, oh, you poor thing. Yeah. You don't know what that means. Yeah. Let me.
Well, I think communication skills are super important. And like some people have asked me in the past, like, well, isn't polyamory like super hard? Like, how do you like get good at it? I'm like, do you realize like how many people in monogamous
how do you win
relationships?
Polyamory?
Yeah, I know, yeah, but how many people in monogamous relationships are good at it? Like, I think like a lot of them are not.
and
win marriages.
So as a person who is actually quite successful at monogamy, something that's a fun fact is when people are in a monogamous relationship, and this I think you see this really especially with people, and I was this case, where they enter a monogamous relationship very, very young, and then that monogamous relationship lasts a very long time, and so they kind of just walk around the world thinking like, I'm so good at relationships, like I have figured out my communication shit and I know what I'm doing, and I'm like, I've figured this out and I'm good at this, and really they've only got that one relationship's worth of experience.
They're 15 years deep into one narrow topic.
And so, well, on one hand, they do have, when you are with somebody for a decade or more, you gain an understanding of what it is like to integrate your life with somebody, to live with somebody, to work through, like, all those things that you were talking about, Matlock, a little while ago with your partner, right? Like, all of those things, you've done that because you've been in that relationship for that long. So it's like, yes, on one hand, you do have all of that kind of experience,
right?
But with all of one person.
Right. And everyone's temperament is different. Everyone has a different background. I was so lucky, like, to find somebody where we were able to.
It's like you were compatible and they were available. And
I understand it's not just like, do what we do, just talk to each other. It's like some people can't talk or don't have the tools.
But also it's just it's so much more, I think, to that. And so you really do learn that, I think, when you do more relationships, that people, like, there's no such thing as being good at relationships. There are people who are emotionally intelligent and have like, empathy and compastion and
and there's Adam.
like social skills.
And what are those things?
And then there's like me, and then there's the people on this call. Then there's the rest.
Which ones are hot? That's all I need to know. So Matlock, I actually was going to turn it to you for a sec. And if you want me, I don't want to like pry into your life on a podcast.
Then
like,
stop.
If you want me
Okay. Stop it.
So don't care. Anyway, if you want me to cut this, I will. But I was going to bring up.
If I want you to cut it, then I really want you to keep it in, actually.
Okay, yeah.
No matter how much I protest.
If you're seeing this, some even worse shit.
I don't want it in. It's gold.
The reason I bring it up is that, like you said, you yourself are identify as non-binary, and you obviously like are a little more fluid than the average whoever heteronormative Joe.
So with this lifestyle I've chosen,
so with your agenda. No, but I've heard you talk in the past about the concept of like sharing your partner, of like whether or not you would do swinging or polyamory or just have sex outside of your relationship, and it seemed to me that like that's something that you've always been like very like not like going for it, but you're like I'd try it,
well,
sure,
I was.
What's your stance?
I mean, I think I was with a different partner when I considered that. And I was much younger when I was considering that, only because it was like, well, we've never done anything with, like, my first partner of 14 years, we were virgins when we got together. And then we were together for 14 years. So it was like, hey, we haven't had sex with anybody else. Like, if you want, I was like, if you want,
yeah.
It doesn't even have to be with me in the room. Like, I don't want to deprive you of life experience by saying you can never have another penis inside you because mine was first. So it's like,
there's other rides at the carnival,
exactly.
And you don't always have to be. Yeah,
invite someone in if something happens. I was always open to that prospect as a matter of like, I just don't want to put limitations on like our human experience, right? And then my current partner, I mean, neither of us have that drive. Like, we're just both comfortable. Fine. Like it's just like, I'm fine. Nice. I'm not looking outside. Nice. Like, why would I want all that complication of another person that I have to worry about how they would react to me? Like, this person, I know how to predict. They know how to predict me. I know how to predict them. We know how to handle ourselves and each other and be happy and keep each other safe and warm and comfortable. Like, why would you want to invite some chaos into the mix? Like,
I guess
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
I don't mean to imply anything. I guess like I actually find it admirable that you're just open-minded. Like that are.
So that on that, and kind of to tie it in, when we first got together, me and my current partner, she was planning, when we started dating, already planning on going to Thailand for 6 months to a year to teach English. And she was like, so I'm going to be away,
Are you sure that's why, or was that just like the ultimate brush off? And
as soon as we started dating, she was looking for tickets to Thailand. No, she was like, so that's going to be a thing. I don't know if I'm ready for a long-term relationship. And I was like, well, I recognize this as being very good, for me at least, like, and I'm not going to do anything to try and fuck this up, So I was like, I'll wait. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'll wait. And I was like, and honestly, like, since you weren't planning on being in a relationship when you went, if you meet someone there, something strikes you as hot or like a once in a lifetime experience, like, take it.
You want to have adventures?
Yeah, you want to have adventures. I don't want to stand in your way. Like, you've only known me for a couple months now and you're leaving, so I'm not going to put any restrictions on you. And then plus, if you meet somebody that you connect with more than me, like, I won't be happy about it. Like, I won't be jumping for joy.
I'll burn down your house, but I'm not going to stop. I'll celebrate you.
I was like, but I'm not going to stop being your friend. I'm not going to treat you like shit. Like, I'm not going to be toxic towards you. Like, if you find something better than this, like, please be happy. Like, but I was like, this is worth waiting for me. And she was like, I don't know anybody who would say any of those things. And she went, and 6 months, we just, long distance relationship over Skype. Back in those days, it was Skype. And then for the millennials out there, the Zennials,
they're like, what is Skype?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
it's like when you TikTok to each other but longer.
I think they call that snapping. I think they snap.
Yeah.
I don't speak young.
I do. I try.
That's
I try to keep up.
that's because you get to date whoever you want.
That's also true.
I just
I
want
have
to
to keep
add.
up with the Lego.
Yeah.
I just want to add for the end of that story is like I think that choice to like not only I think it was good to like have that separation for 6 months, so we had to get to know each other as people without just the sex even coming into it.
Being forced to take a step back is
Right.
an interesting concept.
And I was fighting codependency. There was a lot of stuff that I was like trying not to just like, oh, I want this thing, more of this relationship. I was trying not to like overwhelm her, and I was like, this is good for me because it'll make me hold back, and we get to know each other better, so she can learn to trust me more before she commits. And then I think that trust of going like, hey, if you find something that's better for you, by all means take it. Like neither of us have had, like she didn't have any urges while she was there. She was like, and plus she heard about all the diseases that tourists carry around in Thailand.
Plus Thailand,
like,
but
maybe I won't be sleeping around with all the hot guys I go hiking with. But so she, and since then it's been like we don't really. I never had the urge. My last relationship had the urge many times to try and escape it by cheating or being with somebody else because I wasn't happy. And I figured I've been with this person so long, I can't just leave them. So it felt like a life or death thing where you're either in it forever or, anyways, I won't go into all that.
Yeah, no, I think of it like, and not to be like super cliche, but that like if you love something, let it go type thing, which I think it's a good feeling. Like if someone's like so invested, like, and like, I want you to be happy, even if making you happy isn't me, like,
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's,
and it worked. The trick worked.
What a con.
Locked it
9 years.
down.
Wow.
She fell for it for a decade.
Wow.
Blowjobs every day. No, I'm kidding. I don't know why that would be a thing.
I mean, it's part of the deal. Yeah.
You're so giving. I can't believe you said that 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. Anyway,
I had to totally tear down every sweet thing that I'd said about it.
That's fine. That's why. Yeah, I was trying to put you on a pedestal, and you just knocked that right out from under yourself.
That's what I'm good at. That's what I'm good at. You set me up, I'll knock myself down.
Yeah. So aside from being the greatest human being that's ever lived,
by the way, did I tell you I rescued 16 kittens this morning?
This morning.
Yeah, this morning. And that's not even counting all the dolphins.
Yeah, he did put them in danger, but
now the dolphins were raping the kittens. That is true. But...
Wow. Okay, so
it was not consensual.
Let's go back to Jessie. Actually, let's go back to Jessie and
Am
say,
I still here? Am I still in this room?
Sorry, Jessie.
Tell me some more about your website. What the motivation behind it is. What you hope to achieve.
Eventually paying my rent. That's one of my ultimate goals. No, cut that part out. Just kidding.
Yeah. It's in.
I mean, like we all live under capitalism, so that is the unfortunate, one of the unfortunate realities. No, so the goal really with the site is that there's a lot more polyamorous resources available than there used to be, and there's this like growing number of authors, coaches, therapists, content creators, like all different kinds of people in the like online space and sphere. There's more events, there's more people discovering non-monogamy all the time. And so there isn't right now kind of like a central hub for all of that information that's happening. There's like kind of, this blogger, that podcast, this, person I follow on Instagram or TikTok. Mm-hmm. But there's not really like one kind of centralized location for kind of all of the non-monogamous resources. Mm-hmm. And not just like all of the different like books and tools, but also like I wanted to curate things that are of interest to the community. So one of the very first things I started with on the site is a guide to condoms. When you become non-monogamous, condoms are suddenly a thing you talk about that apparently monogamous people are not talking about condoms enough. when I got out of my marriage and I started like dating and I like got on OkCupid circa 2014, 2015, I was very surprised at how few conversations about condoms were happening. Let me just say that when I went out into the dating world and was like, wait a minute, people. Anywho, when you become non-monogamous, condoms are usually one of the first conversations you have with, especially if you're in a monogamous relationship that's opening up. Or, like me, as a solo poly person, condoms are a conversation I'm having with all of my partners, both about who I'm using them with, where I'm using them, where I'm not using them. And barriers are just this kind of important thing that happens all the time. Even if you're in what some people call a fluid bonded situation where you don't have you're not using barriers, sometimes like birth control changes or somebody has an STI exposure. Some of these other things will happen where you all of a sudden have to go back to using barriers again. And so because condoms are a conversation you're having and they're coming up all the time, I wanted to write some guides to make it easier for people to shop for condoms. So we have everything from all different kinds of condoms guide to ultra thin textured condoms, snug fit, large fit, variety packs, all different kinds of things, so that people can find the condoms that they're going to need if they want to enjoy non-monogamy.
So this is going to sound a little weird, but what is a condom?
What is this prophylactic of which you speak?
I don't.
I was like, well, you should. I have so much information about condoms that I've learned, not just like
bursting with information about condoms.
But in order to write this content for the site, I'm doing so much research now about things like condoms. I'm like, well, since the 1500s, and I was about to like launch into a thing about condoms.
What was the first condom made from? Can you tell us what the first condom was made from?
So condoms used to be made from intestines. That's what. That's what.
Yummy.
And they still can if you play your cards right.
Flavored. They were flavored even back then.
No, that's so unpleasant. But anyway,
haggis flavored.
Point being, humans have been non-monogamous for a long time, and but anyway,
before marriage was probably even a thing,
right? So the site is basically supplying polyamorous people with all different kinds of resources, things that they need, whether that is gift guides for partners and metas, which is something we've been doing a lot of for the holidays. So doing things like gifts that are gender neutral for partners or metas with any body, gifts that are for your polycules bartender, for people who are your non-monogamous coffee. We've got silly gifts for fun, like just all different kinds of things on the site and on the Instagram, and as of today, on Facebook.
Sounds awesome.
It's kind of like a museum and depository of information and related products of poly.
Right now it's just kind of me gathering a lot of poly things into one place, but that is the name, Just Poly Things, right? So the idea is that eventually we get all of the things that are just poly things all together in one nice little place where you can just one-stop shop for like, I want to just know about poly things today.
I'm rooting for you to become like the face of poly and to be like the most poly. And
there's so many other content creators that are already doing that, and I want to partner with them and promote their content because.
When you say partner,
right?
So
partner
Jessie,
with them and promote their content.
Partner the shit out of them. And anyway.
What's your angle with this whole website? How are you planning to make the money off of it? That's what I'm wondering. Like, where do you get? How do you get your?
So it is. No, that's what I said. Like, right? It's like paying the rent, right? It's like so. It is because it is a affiliate marketing site. So right now, what we're doing is we're using an affiliate marketing model. We've partnered with Amazon to start because they are the easiest to get set up with. But we
so you spoke with Jeff Bezos, like you're like this.
They actually, there's just like a form you fill out on Amazon's website. It's very simple. You do not actually have to
and you get to fly on the rocket ship afterwards, right? You get to fly with them.
I have to hit certain sales goals before I get to fly on the Amazon jet. So if y'all can just go to the site and click on the links and buy the shit already, I'm just No, but anyway,
is it just a throw money at you button? Because
the idea, though, really, in all actual honesty, is that it is an Amazon affiliate link site, so that I can get established, and then eventually I want to partner directly with poly brands and poly content creators, and especially people who are creating poly merch like stickers, buttons, t-shirts, that kind of stuff. Those poly designers are not all set up with affiliate programs yet. So as that kind of like market matures, like I'm trying to do Amazon to kind of build up the following and build up all of the collect all of the hub resources together, while like people like Polyam Fam and some others get on their affiliate programs so that we can partner with them and then be promoting their products directly.
Is there a group called Polyam Fam, or are you just
I am shouting out somebody that I follow on Instagram that makes button stickers and cool shit that I would love to promote on my site, but they don't have an affiliate program yet.
I'll throw up that Instagram link if I can find it.
Yeah, and there's not just them, but there's a bunch, but there's people like that who are independent poly creators. That's who we eventually really want to be partnered with, but we have to get there first. So Amazon is the one that was like, we will partner with anybody because you just fill out a form.
We're corporate whores. Hop in.
That's basically why Amazon is first. Yes, is because capitalism.
That's fine.
The whores are always first.
But we have to. This is how we dismantle it from the inside, or something. I don't know. Really, I have ideas about how we take apart Amazon and make it work for everybody that are very anti-capitalist. So I can't talk about those while I'm also an affiliate partner.
I don't think podcast under a different name.
This is why I don't want to be the face or the voice of polyamory. I might be.
Because I might be on a list.
No, as I'm saying that, I'm like, no, the voices of polyamory are very anti-capitalist, anti-colonial, anti-structure, anti-establishment, anarchist.
And that's all. And that's all we'll say about that.
And we'll leave that on that note.
Anti-M, they're really
no
anti-M.
There's definitely no agenda. Right?
Great. I was just wondering about other things.
I was just while you were speaking, I obviously didn't do my Google research before this podcast, so there were a few words that I'm not sure if you maybe I just missed it, but you said partner and meta. So what? If there's maybe a couple terms that you may have used throughout the podcast,
sure.
that people who don't have Google at their fingertips, maybe they've got headphones on and they're working with heavy machinery. Figures. They can't they don't have the Google Glass. They can't just ask Cortana. So would you tell me some of the definitions of these? Like what are maybe some of the names of the different types of partners that you would have, for example?
Yeah, so usually, not everybody picks different things, but partner is a pretty typical word in polyamory. You also have your metas or your metamors, which is actually your partner's partner. So if I'm dating someone and they're dating someone else, that person that they're dating, if I'm not involved with that person would be my metamor.
Okay.
If you break up, this is just my own lingo, but if you break up with that person and you want to stay metas with the person that you connected with as a meta, but you don't want to have that hinge anymore, you can then become meta-nomors, which is a new one that me and somebody just very recently came up with.
It's canon, right? Because you are the face of polyamory now.
We are still metas, but now
isn't that just friends at that point?
We are meta-nomors.
Mm-hmm.
That is our label.
That's fine.
Right now.
That's fine.
That is our preferred label right now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you're right, Adam. It would be you're just friends again, but then it's there's still that
But there's a more intimate connection than right, because you dated the same person, and especially if you dated the same person at the same time,
you might know what their poop smells like.
Yeah, you have unique things in common.
Yeah. Especially and I practice something, so here's more vocabulary for you. I practice something called kitchen table polyamory, which is the idea that everybody kind of knows everybody might hang out. The phrase comes from the idea that you might all have breakfast around the same kitchen table, even though you're not all necessarily romantically or sexually involved with each other. And so in that case, for example, that meta, we're not romantically involved, so we but that kitchen table idea is that like we would still all hang out.
It's like everyone in the polycule is all socially interactive.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, I'm sure everybody's different, and maybe I'm just going to ask what would you picture as a perfect polyamorous unit? Like in my head, right? Like, so in my head, I just pictured like, well, what if you had a commune? Everyone on that commune is in a shared, like one or more of them are all metas or partners to each other. Right, yeah. So you've got your own garden, you've got goats.
How does your hippie
commune
have
goats?
Okay, so my actual version of this is that I find enough partners who are financially stable enough that we all decide to go in on an apartment complex together. Something small, something in the like 5 to 10 unit range. We then inhabit each individually our own units and then rent out the remaining units. And this is my own personal version of this, is like you go in on an apartment complex and then you have some communal, shared space. You set up like a corporation that you can all get health insurance from, shit like that, right? Because it's gonna like run the apartment complex and pay all the expenses and then you're just like, you also like, have tenants for the additional units.
Now, do you have alternate ways of paying your rent?
I'm sorry. That's right.
I get it though. It's like a pyramid scheme, and then you start renting them out, and that's your agenda. You start converting people to polyamory so that they buy these apartments at twice the original price.
And then eventually I own apartment complexes all over the world. No, that's
there's polyamorous skin lotions that you start having them sell door to door, and they buy
check
them
us out. Check us out at polypimp.edu. Like it's
But yeah, that's my own personal like commune version, right? Is just me and a bunch of people go in an apartment complex. Lots of people want to do the like, let's all get a giant ass house and a bunch of land somewhere and raise a bunch of kids. Like, sure, if you wanna do that,
it takes a village.
That I don't know, that personally doesn't seem for me, because I too value my independence, I think, a little bit too much to enjoy the idea of
you just live in the barn. You just live in the silo.
Just out in the fuck barn.
Yeah, that's not working for me. So yeah, I mean, but really, I mean, I think everybody's poly configuration is different. There are people, most poly relationships are dyads, which is just two people. But there's, triads or thruples, there's quads, there's any number of like different configurations that you can have. So whatever people want to do.
Are there any types of relationships that get confused for polyamory, or any kind of, what would you say are some common misnomers or misconceptions people have about it that maybe tick you off or personal?
My favorite one, and this is such a hotly debated topic, is whether or not polyamory is an orientation. Are you born polyamorous or do you practice polyamory? That is a like very heated and debated topic, and I get into arguments in the community about this one all the time. My own personal opinion of this one is that polyamory is not an innate trait, as in it's not something that you are born. And the reason I believe that, I have a whole number of reasons. I can go into it, but primarily it has to do with the idea that you don't decide whether you're going to be polyamorous or monogamous until you are an adult entering romantic relationships. So you choose to be one or the other. And innate traits, the kinds of traits, like things that you are born with, like your religion, your race, your gender identity, your like all of these other different kinds of things that are like protected legally. Those are not things that you can choose. Like, you do not choose whether or not you're born with a disability, and if you're born with a disability, you don't get to like choose not to have it anymore. Whereas polyamory as a marginalized identity is one that you can choose to stop having. You can just decide not to be polyamorous anymore, and now you're no longer that marginalized identity. So it is not an innate trait in the same way as like being queer or something like that is. And that's my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean it's not an identity, right? Because that's where people get hung up on this. And you can still identify as, because I believe that people, there is still a spectrum, right? Some people are more monogamous and some people are more promiscuous, is the word that we need to be using instead of polyamorous on the other side of the spectrum. But because if we're just going to be, I don't know, I'm a vocabulary nerd, but like the reason for this is because the having attraction to multiple people, like people polybomb people in monogamous relationships. And what happens here is like you'll be in a monogamous relationship going along, and then all of a sudden somebody develops feelings for somebody else, and now they have to come out to their monogamous partner as polyamorous, and they polybomb their monogamous partner and say, well, you have to accept me for who I am. That is fucking bullshit. That is cheating, and that is using polyamory as an excuse. And the reason for that is because anybody in my own theories on this, and I have, you know, no degrees or anything to back this up. This is just life experience talking, but anybody who has or is capable of experiencing romantic or sexual attraction is going to be capable of experiencing that for multiple people at the same time. Now, maybe that's never happened to them, but the practice of monogamy or polyamory or any other type of relationship is based on whether or not you agreed to monogamy or whatever. So there is no like line. Yeah. Exactly. There is no like line of like, oh, well, now I've done this. Like, so, that having feelings for somebody else, that doesn't make you special, that doesn't make you unique, and that doesn't make you polyamorous. Being in a polyamorous relationship is what makes you polyamorous, because you chose that with your consenting partners. Not your monogamous partner who's like, what the fuck?
What if it's and I'm just shooting in the wind here, but like, what if like you discover like that about yourself in the midst of a monogamous relationship?
Then you have to discuss it with your partner and say, hey, I'm having the thought that I might want that, but you don't pursue it first and then present it.
Here's the thing. So feelings are feelings, and they're not facts. And when we get feelings for particularly romantic feelings, right? We are told by society that we need to do something, like those feelings are urgent and we have to do something, and we have to like, you know, we may like never have this opportunity again to feel like this ever again. And that's usually those feelings are lying to you, right? Like what you actually want to look at if you're in that situation, if you're monogamous in a monogamous relationship and you've suddenly developed feelings for somebody else, look at your situation. How monogamous is your relationship? How monogamous is your partner? How monogamous are you? If you're not being honest about your feelings and your desires, then that's a problem. But that has nothing to do with polyamory or non-monogamy. That has to do with honesty. And the other thing that, you know, I think is important to point out is plenty of monogamous people develop feelings and go, oh, those are feelings. Okay, cool. But over here, I have all this other stuff that is based on availability and compatibility and whatever. I don't think I want to act on these feelings. I'm just going to shut that shit down. And that's a valid response too, right? To choose to say, okay, I don't want to encourage this because I like this other thing that I have over here. And there's people who choose that. You can choose to do that. You can choose to set boundaries. You can say, okay, like, you know, if you have feelings for a coworker, you can get transferred to a different department, or like there's a billion things, like whatever the situation, or murder them, whatever the situation calls for. But the point is, everybody has choices and everybody makes choices. And just because you're in a monogamous relationship, that does not preclude your partner falling for somebody else. That is still possible. That's going to happen. That's possible to happen. Especially because the way love works for humans is more like the way love works for our friends, or like the way it works for like parents with children. When you have a second child, you don't love your first one less. Like, unless your second child is way better and your first one was shitty or something, you know? But like,
which most are. Let's admit
unless
it.
There's a clear raising of the bar.
The first one's always a mistake.
And you break up with your first partner, like, that's just a breakup. You know, it happens. It does.
Right. Maybe your first kid was that guy who did a keg stand at Phi Beta Kappa, and the second kid is from a PhD
and
doctorate.
You learned what you valued in relationships between them. I don't know. Yeah. That's not.
I'm just trying to decide how to rank children.
This doesn't really work. This is not. That analogy is breaking down.
I want to know how to reduce people to numbers and remove their humanity.
I had one last question before we wrap up.
Sure.
But do you find I don't know, maybe this is related to what we were talking about, but do you encounter a lot of like monogamous couples that have both decided to open up their relationship to polyamory? Like, do you find them? I mean, is that a common?
Like, is she the guru that people go to?
It's like, I mean, I don't know if you have any experience or have talked to people who have been in that, where they've been like, yeah, I presented to my partner, they said they were open to it, or they had the similar feelings, or it was something we were always kind of talked about.
I definitely, I know both in my own, like, I would say poly community or sphere, I know both couples that have like opened like together, where they're like, they decided, okay, we're going to open, and now that's what we do. Versus ones that like either were already polyamorous, or, you know, got together or formed through other configurations where kind of everybody was already poly. There's every possible like configuration and constellation is out there in the community. And really, you know, when you think about non-monogamy as a wider umbrella, when you take into account things like kink communities, things like swingers, you know, people who like couples who hire sex workers, like there's all different kinds of non-monogamy that are valid and consensual and happening, and like I would love to say we should all normalize, but
well, I think like my take on that was that everyone kind of has their own brand, right? Like you almost never meet anyone who does poly exactly like someone else,
right?
You know,
yes, which is right. That point I was making earlier, right, about how like as your understanding of the abundance and the availability of connection grows, you're also like your compatibility with individuals shrinks, right? Because you narrow down like what you're looking for and what they're looking for, and you know what level of how open are they, or how, you know, what boundaries do they have. Another thing, going back to like language real quick, is something called veto, where like couples can or cannot have vetoes. So like if a couple is dating and somebody outside of that relationship, if one of the members of the primary couple in that case doesn't like that other person, they can say you can't date them and veto them, and they have to end that relationship. Like situations like that, you know, there's all different kinds of levels of the ways that people want to engage in non-monogamous
to begin
relationships.
with, the community has a set of, it's got a language and a set of ground rules that everybody can kind of work with, or they're developed over time.
Right? Like, words are hard, so you encounter people who use words wrong or mean things to different people, right? Things mean different things to different people. But I think, there is, we attempt to have a shared vocabulary of, you know, kind of how relationships work, how these dynamics work. And, you know, and that's why I say, like, to people who are looking to like find out more, or like thinking about getting involved, or like thinking about trying this, like read, like go online, read books, read the.
What are you doing listening to this podcast? What are you going to learn from
no, I mean,
this?
like listen to podcasts,
Glued to your screen.
Right? There's all different kinds of ways to like get information about what that vocabulary is.
Like
and then
maybe there's a
out
website they could
who are-
visit, and you could give them the name of that website
Yeah,
right
so
now.
one more time, they can go to justpolythings.com.
Oh,
or
hey.
at Shop Just Poly Things on Instagram, and they can learn more about polyamory and maybe even shop for some poly things.
Hey, I want some poly things.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we've actually come around to about the top of the hour, so I think we can effectively wrap up here.
It's time for the weather.
Yes.
And with
And
that report, Jesse, what's the weather today?
Always the darkness in LA.
If I had been able to bust that out, I wanted to be like, well, in Los Angeles, the low tonight will be 59 degrees. But
always have it ready. Always just you never know when that's going to happen.
It's like one of the main topics that people talk about is the weather.
The one time you needed that app on your phone.
Yeah. If you're good at small talk, always have the weather in your back pocket. And actually, that's funny because people have actually asked me, I work remotely and I'm an introvert a lot, and I've had people in my job and remotely on Zoom or something be like, "Oh, how's the weather been?" And I literally go, "Oh shit,
Oh, that's right. Outside exists.
I have it's air conditioned and it's 72 degrees.
When was the last time you were outside your house, Adam?
Yeah,
was it this year? That year's almost over.
It's not important.
Thank you for joining us, Jesse. It was very lovely
Thank you.
talking to you and very informative. And thank you for answering all the questions.
Where I just sound horrible and capitalistic and salesy.
Well, then we'll only have a 5-minute episode, and we need at least 10 minutes. So
sorry.
Yeah.
You were great. Thank you.
All right. So yes, again, everyone, I'm here with Jessie Rushing, our special guest, with Matlock Zemsteg, and myself, Adam Aragon. We are the Podcast Wreckers. You can find us online at podcastwreckers.com. You can find us on Facebook under the same name, and you can also find us by making your own damn website and calling it that.
And make sure to check out Jessie Rushing's website, which is polythings.com.
Just polythings.
Thank you for correcting. Now we got it out 3 times in 5 seconds. Just polythings.com.
So
all right.
Visit the Podcast Records, visit justpolythings.com, and go have fun with yourself and the weather. Good night.
Thank you for joining us. All right.
Thank you.